This video is about selling your business. It's intended for business owners. I'll cover some basic topics including the process, documents, and people involved. I'm going to cover these topics at a high level and move quickly. I'll also explain the private equity model because business owners tell me that this insight has been extremely helpful for them. I'm going to break down the process into 5 steps. Let me acknowledge the Harvard Business Review, who published an article years ago introducing this framework. Building your team is a priority because you're going to need help. You're going to need an accountant and an attorney. You may choose to use an advisor. We'll cover the services provided by advisors. Advisors work for either an investment bank or an M&A advisory firm. They specialize in industries to develop expertise and relationships in order to better serve their clients. They charge an upfront fee and a percentage of the transaction at close. After you've built your team, you're ready to begin the process. This is a list of some of the tasks that you'll begin work on. In the next step, we'll discuss these documents, but their preparation begins here in step 1. Many business owners don't want to hear this term, but we're going to be discussing EBITDA. I understand why owners prefer to talk about their brand, services, and other things driving value, but the company's EBITDA is important to buyers. Advisors manage what is essentially a modified auction process. Modified in the sense that you may have your own preferences or directions. Advisors should tailor the process to your wishes. The next step is to send a one-page description of your business to a large number of buyers. This document is referred to as a teaser. While the teaser describes your company, it doesn't mention your name and other facts to allow a buyer to identify you. If they're interested in learning more, the buyers will sign a confidentiality agreement. Note that I said the teaser is sent to a large number of buyers. Advisors maintain a database of potential buyers for your business. That part of the advisor's service is critical. There are 2 kinds of buyers. It's common for business owners to think only of their competitors or strategic buyers when selling their business. Financial buyers often outnumber strategic buyers by over 2 to 1. The goal is to market your business to a large number of quality buyers, including the financial buyers that you may have never heard of. Interested parties that sign the confidentiality agreement will then receive a Confidential Information Memorandum, or CIM. We prepare this with your help. Oftentimes the CIM is over 20 pages and covers a great deal of information. The next step is to work with buyers, answer their questions on the CIM, and manage the calendar. We'll evaluate all the offers with you, including value, terms, and the buyers themselves. The auction is the very best way for business owners to get feedback directly from the market. Offers come in the form of a letter of intent. Please understand that it's not all about price. Other facts are equally important. At this stage, you'll be dealing with several interested buyers, and it's a good time for the seller to evaluate which buyer they want to work with. Oftentimes, sellers get a little ahead of themselves. Some think that once they sign the LOI, the process is close to being over. In many ways, it's just starting. I hope that what you take away from this video is that following a disciplined process will get you your best result. A word about the LOI. As the name implies, the buyer and seller intend to move forward on the transaction. It is not a legally binding contract. The seller agrees to work exclusively with that one buyer on the next step as parties invest time and money on diligence. There are 2 kinds of transactions, an asset sale and a stock sale. There are considerations for the business owner, including taxes, legal liabilities, and others. You'll want to work with your team to understand the issues on your particular transaction. Step 4 is due diligence, and to begin with, diligence is a lot of work. Prior to diligence, the buyer has only the seller's representations of the business. Due diligence is the process where the buyer reviews everything as they confirm those representations and their own assumptions underlying the transaction. The advisor hosts a data room. The seller uploads the documents requested by the buyer. There are periodic phone calls where the buyer asks questions. An advisor should be very involved here, helping to answer questions, manage the calendar, and review all of the buyer's findings. While the closing itself is kind of a formality, getting from the completion of diligence to the close can require renegotiation of deal points. That's why communication through diligence is so important. There shouldn't be any surprises at this point. Again, it's why choosing the right advisor and buyer is so critical. Selling your business is an emotional process. It should also be very rewarding. Having completed hundreds of transactions, I'd simply urge you to choose your team wisely. I want to talk a little about private equity only because I get a lot of questions on this topic. You can think of this as the source of capital for many buyers. This is a diagram of the private equity model. I'll explain it by moving from left to right. To start with, there are now approximately 6,800 private equity groups in the United States. They manage over $3 trillion in capital. The largest source of capital for private equity is from public pension funds. In this example, a private equity firm raises $1 billion of capital in a new fund. They operate as the general partner, and their investors are limited partners. It's not uncommon for the limited partners to require the principals of the private equity group to put their own money into the fund. The fund begins investing in a number of businesses. In this example, it invests in 20 different portfolio companies. If you look on the website of a private equity firm, you'll likely see the names of their portfolio companies and their prior successes. Their objective is to increase the value of these portfolio companies during their holding period or time of ownership. I'll address how they do that on the next slide. Ultimately, they'll sell these businesses. The private equity group makes money through two kinds of fees, and you may hear the term 2 and 20. It's common for them to charge 2% of the asset value for management services. They're also entitled to 20% of the gains on the sale of these portfolio companies. This is an image of how they grow the value of their portfolio companies. Generally, there's an investment in a platform company and then a number of smaller acquisitions. The platform company is a larger company with a good reputation and an infrastructure from which others can be added. The numbers in EBITDA multiples differ based on the several factors, but the business model itself hasn't changed in decades. They strive to build a strong management team, make acquisitions, operational improvements, and generate organic growth. By the end of their holding period, the company will have attributes which make it far more valuable, so they're able to attract a large exit multiple and great returns for investors. I provided these models to help you understand the broader picture. Advisors don't simply manage the transaction process. They know the buyers and where the capital is that's targeting specific companies. Advisors help both the buyer and seller achieve their goals. My name is Dave Turgeon. I've provided my information below. I work with an M&A advisory firm named Vertess. I'd be glad to answer any questions or provide any help that I can. Thanks very much. I hope this was helpful.